All right, settle in, grab an ale. You're tuned in to the Small Council Unfiltered, the only broadcast in the Seven Kingdoms telling you what the lords and ladies in their high castles don't want you to know. I'm your host, and tonight we're tackling a question that's been whispered from the wall to the shores of dawn, a question that cuts to the very heart of one of the most respected men in the realm. We're talking about Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell, the Warden of the North, a man whose name is practically a synonym for the word honor. You know the stories. He's dutiful, he's loyal, he's just. But there's one part of his story that's never quite added up, one blemish on a flawless record. Jon Snow. The question is simple, but the answer is anything but. Why didn't Ned Stark, the most honorable man in Westeros, ever tell his own wife, Catelyn, the truth about Jon Snow's mother? This isn't just some piece of household gossip. This single secret has shaped the North. It has defined the Stark family for a generation. And the reasons behind it, well, they might just be more important than you could ever imagine. So tonight, we're going to break it all down. We're going to look at three key things. First, the official story. What does the world think happened, and why is it such a big deal in the first place? Second, the holes in that story. We'll look at the whispers, the rumors, and the evidence that suggests there's something much, much bigger going on here. And third, the most difficult question of all. Assuming the deepest, most dangerous secret is true, why would Ned Stark keep it from the one person he was bound to by oath and love? Why not tell Catelyn? Let's get into it. So, let's get the official story straight. It's the one you've probably heard from a traveling singer or a drunken lord's guard. Robert's rebellion ends, the mad King Aerys is dead, the Targaryens are defeated, and Robert Baratheon sits the Iron Throne. Eddard Stark, who fought alongside him, goes south to finish the war. He fights his way to a place in Dorne called the Tower of Joy, and after a bloody battle, he heads home to Winterfell. But he doesn't come home alone. He arrives with a newborn baby, a boy with the dark hair and grey eyes of a Stark. He names him Jon Snow, Snow being the name given to all high-born bastards in the north. Now, at the same time, his new wife, Catelyn Tully, is waiting for him. Remember, their marriage was a political one, arranged to seal an alliance between the North and the Riverlands during the war. They barely knew each other. She has just given birth to their first true-born son, Robb. Imagine that scene. You're a new mother. Your husband, who you barely know, comes home from a year of war, and in his arms is another woman's child. His child. He tells you and the whole world, "This is my son." When people ask who the mother is, Ned Stark goes silent. He shuts down. He refuses to speak her name. Ever. This silence is what turns a simple mistake into a festering wound. Now, for us common folk, having a bastard isn't exactly rare, happens all the time. But for a high lord like Ned Stark, it's a different game entirely. And we need to understand why this was such a catastrophe for his family, especially for Catelyn. First, there's the public dishonor. Ned Stark's entire reputation is built on honor. He's the stark, pun intended, contrast to the scheming, backstabbing lords of the South. For him to have fathered a bastard while his new bride was at home carrying his true-born heir, it was a public declaration of infidelity. It was a slap in the face to Catelyn and her powerful family, House Tully.
It made him look like a hypocrite, the one and only time in his entire life that his actions didn't seem to match his words. Second, there's the personal betrayal for Catelyn. This isn't just about politics. This is about a man bringing a living, breathing symbol of his affair into their home. He didn't send Jon away to be fostered, which is what most lords would do. He didn't hide him in a remote castle. He insisted on raising Jon at Winterfell alongside his true-born children.
Every day for 14 years, Catelyn had to look at Jon Snow. She had to watch him eat at their table, train in the yard with her sons, and be loved by her husband. Every time she looked at him, she saw the face of the unknown woman her husband supposedly chose over her. She saw the evidence of a love, or at least a lust, that existed outside their marriage bed. It was a constant, daily reminder of her husband's one great shame. It's a cruelty, intentional or not, that is hard to overstate. It planted a seed of bitterness and resentment in their marriage that never, ever went away. Third, and this is the one the lords care about most, is the political threat. High-born bastards are dangerous. History is filled with them. The Blackfire rebellions, which tore the realm apart for generations, were started by a king's bastard who thought he deserved the throne. Even if the bastard himself has no ambition, he can become a pawn, a disgruntled bannerman, a rival lord. Anyone looking to challenge the true-born heir could say, "Why, Rob, Jon Snow has Stark blood too, and he's older or better with a sword or more popular with the men." By keeping Jon at Winterfell, Ned was raising a potential rival to his own son, Rob. It was a politically foolish and risky move. It created a potential fracture point right in the heart of House Stark. So, the official story leaves us with a massive contradiction. Eddard Stark, the man who lives and breathes honor, committed a deeply dishonorable act against his wife and house, and then made the politically baffling decision to raise the evidence of that dishonor in his own home. He stained his own name, hurt his wife deeply, and created a potential threat to his heir, all for a bastard son whose mother he refuses to even name. It just doesn't add up. And that brings us to the whispers. When the official story doesn't make sense, you have to start looking for a different one. And to find it, we have to go back to before the rebellion, back to the great tourney at Harrenhal. Think of it like the biggest harvest festival you've ever seen, but with knights, kings, and all the great lords of the realm. The highlight of the tourney was the jousting, and the champion of the joust was none other the Crown Prince himself, Rhaegar Targaryen. Rhaegar was the son of the Mad King, but he was nothing like his father. He was said to be brilliant, handsome, a great warrior, but also melancholic and obsessed with prophecy. He was married to the Dornish princess Elia Martell, and they had 2 children. After winning the final tilt, it was Rhaegar's right as champion to crown a queen of love and beauty. Everyone expected him to crown his wife, Elia. It was the proper, honorable thing to do. He didn't. Instead, he rode his horse right past his own wife and laid the crown of blue winter roses in the lap of another woman, Lyanna Stark, Ned Stark's younger sister. The silence in that moment was said to be deafening. A crown prince publicly snubbing his wife to honor another woman, a woman who was already promised to Robert Baratheon. It was the biggest scandal the realm had seen in years. It was reckless, it was passionate, and it was the spark that lit the fuse of rebellion. Because, not long after that, Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark disappeared together.
The official story, the one Robert Baratheon and the Starks told the world, is that Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna and brutally assaulted her. This is what drove Robert, her betrothed, and her brother Brandon into a rage. When they demanded justice, the Mad King murdered Brandon and their father, Lord Rickard Stark. And that was the final act that started the war. But there are whispers that say something else happened. Lyanna Stark was no damsel in distress. She was a Stark of Winterfell. She was said to have wolf blood. She was wild, strong-willed, and an accomplished rider. The idea that she could be easily kidnapped by one man from the heart of the Riverlands strains belief. The people who knew her best, including her own brother Ned, remember her as fearless and defiant. And Rhaegar, for all his faults, was not known for being a brute. He was a poet, a musician, a scholar. Those who knew him said he was obsessed with fulfilling a prophecy he'd read in his books. So, the whisper, the other story, is that Lyanna didn't go as a captive. She went as a lover.
That she and Rhaegar ran away together, consumed by a forbidden love that would ultimately doom them both. Now, hold that thought. Let's fast forward to the end of the war. Rhaegar is dead, killed by Robert on the Trident. The Mad King is dead, killed by Jaime Lannister. The war is all but over. But Ned Stark isn't celebrating. He takes 6 of his companions and rides south to Dorne, to a small tower that Rhaegar had named the Tower of Joy. And who does he find guarding this tower? Not Dornish soldiers, not sellswords. He finds 3 knights of the Kingsguard. Not just any 3 knights. He finds Sir Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning, the deadliest warrior in the 7 kingdoms. He finds Sir Oswell Went, and he finds Lord Commander Gerald Hightower himself, the White Bull. Now stop and think about that. This is the single most important piece of the puzzle. The Kingsguard are sworn to protect the king. At this moment in time, Rhaegar is dead, the Mad King is dead, but there are still Targaryens left. Rhaegar's other son, the infant Aegon, and his wife Elia are in King's Landing. The new heir, Viserys, and the pregnant queen are on the royal seat of Dragonstone. So why in the 7 hells are the 3 greatest knights in the realm not in King's Landing? Why are they not on Dragonstone guarding the new king and the queen? Why are they hundreds of leagues away, in the middle of nowhere, guarding a lonely tower? Ned asks them this very question, and their answer is everything. They say, "Our prince wanted us here." Rhaegar, their dead prince, had given them an order. And that order was more important than protecting the king. It was more important than protecting the queen or the heir. It was the most important duty they had. What could possibly be that important? The answer is inside the tower. Ned and his companions fight the 3 Kingsguard. It's a brutal battle. In the end, only Ned Stark and one other man, Howland Reed, are left standing. Ned goes inside the tower. And what does he find? He finds his sister Lyanna. Not in chains, not in a dungeon, but in a room that smells of blood and roses. She is dying. In a bed of blood. That phrase is key. A bed of blood. It can mean many things, but to any maester or midwife, it points to one thing above all else: childbirth. Lyanna is dying. She's weak, she has a fever, and she makes her brother promise her something. Her last words are, "Promise me, Ned, promise me." Ned Stark never speaks of what he promised, but after he leaves that tower, he has a newborn baby with him. A baby he takes back to Winterfell and claims as his own bastard son. Do you see it now? The pieces all click into place.
The tourney, the disappearance, the 3 Kingsguard guarding nothing, or rather, guarding someone. Lyanna in a bed of blood, a final desperate promise, and a baby. The whisper, the theory that explains everything is this: Jon Snow is not Ned Stark's son. He is the son of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen. If this is true, he's not a bastard Snow. He's not a Stark. He's a Targaryen. And if Rhaegar and Lyanna were secretly married, which some scholars of ancient Valyrian customs say is possible, then he's not a bastard at all. He's the true-born son of the last Dragon Prince. He is the heir to the Iron Throne. And in that moment, Ned Stark's entire world changes. His new king, his best friend, Robert Baratheon, is a man whose entire reign is built on one thing: a deep, abiding, all-consuming hatred of Targaryens. Robert didn't just want the Targaryens defeated, he wanted them exterminated. He celebrated when Tywin Lannister's men butchered Rhaegar's other children, the infant Aegon and the little girl Rhaenys. He would hunt down and kill any Targaryen he could find. So what does Ned do? He's holding his dying sister's child, his own blood, an innocent baby. He knows with absolute certainty that if Robert ever found out who this child was, he would have him killed without a second thought. So he makes a choice, the hardest choice of his life. He hides the baby in the one place no one would ever think to look. He hides him in plain sight. He claims the child as his own bastard. He dishonors himself. He takes a stain upon his name that will never wash out. He lies to the entire world. He lies to his king, his friend, his bannermen, his children, and his wife. The lie is not an act of shame.
It's an act of profound, gut-wrenching honor. He sacrifices his own reputation to keep his promise to Lyanna. He trades his good name for his nephew's life. This theory fits every single piece of evidence. It explains why Ned is so secretive. The secret is treason. It explains why he brought Jon to Winterfell, to protect him personally. It explains why 3 Kingsguard were at the Tower of Joy. They were guarding the future of their dynasty. And it explains the deep, unshakable sadness that Ned Stark carries with him for the rest of his life. It is the burden of the promise. But this brings us to the final and most important part of our broadcast. If this is all true, why didn't he tell Catelyn? Why let her suffer for all those years? Why let this lie fester between them? Why not trust his own wife with the truth? The answer to that question is more complicated than simple love or trust. It's about politics, fear, and the brutal calculus of survival. So, let's assume the theory is correct. Jon Snow is the secret son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. The fate of the boy, and potentially the realm, rests on this secret being kept. Ned Stark carries this weight alone. Why not share it with Catelyn? On the surface, it seems cruel. They grew to love each other. They built a life together, a family. She was his partner, his lady, the mother of his children. Surely he could trust her. To understand why he couldn't, you have to understand the nature of a secret this large. And you have to understand Catelyn Tully Stark not just as a wife, but as a political player with her own loyalties. We can break down Ned's reasoning into 4 catastrophic risks. Risk number 1, the secret itself. There's an old saying, 3 can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead.
This wasn't some minor indiscretion. This was high treason. The secret of Jon's parentage, if revealed, would not just get Jon killed. It would get Ned killed. It could get his entire family killed. Robert Baratheon would see it as the ultimate betrayal. A Stark hiding a Targaryen heir under his nose for over a decade. He would see it as a plot to overthrow him. He would call his banners. The Lannisters would call theirs. The realm would bleed again. Every single person who knows the secret is a potential point of failure. A word whispered to a handmaiden in confidence, a drunken confession to a brother, a letter that gets intercepted by one of Varys' little birds. That's all it would take. The entire charade would collapse. Ned's decision wasn't about whether he trusted Catelyn's intentions. He wasn't afraid she'd run to King's Landing and sell him out. He was afraid of the simple human reality that secrets are hard to keep. The more people who know, the greater the chance of a slip-up. For a secret of this magnitude, the only acceptable number of living people who knew was the absolute bare minimum. At the start, that was just 2, Ned Stark and Howland Reed. And Howland Reed conveniently vanished into the swamps of the Neck, isolating himself and the secret with him. Telling Catelyn would double the number of people who could, even accidentally, let it slip. From a pure risk management perspective, it was an unacceptable gamble. The stakes were simply too high. It was a matter of life and death, and Ned chose the path of absolute, suffocating security. Risk number 2, the Tully in Catelyn. This is the hard one. This is the one that feels cold, but it is the political reality of their world. Ned Stark loved Catelyn, but he also knew she was first and foremost a Tully. Her family's words are family, duty, honor. But which family? When push comes to shove, Catelyn's unwavering, ferocious, all-consuming loyalty is to her children. To Robb, to Sansa, to Arya, to Bran, and to Rickon. She is a mother lion, and she will do anything to protect her cubs. So put yourself in her shoes. You have a choice.
You can protect this secret nephew, this son of a dead sister-in-law you never knew, and in doing so, keep a ticking time bomb under your own roof. A bomb that could destroy your husband, your home, and your own children. Or you could eliminate the threat. Would she actively harm Jon? Probably not. Catelyn is not a monster. But could she, in a moment of fear for her own children's lives, make a choice that exposes him? Could she confide in her father, Lord Hoster Tully, seeking his counsel and protection? Could she tell her sister, the paranoid and unstable Lysa Arryn, wife of the Hand of the King? The answer is that Ned could not be 100% sure, and 99% sure isn't good enough when a single mistake means death. Think about it from Ned's perspective. Catelyn already resents Jon. She sees him as a threat to her own children's status and a stain on their family. She has begged Ned to send him away. Now, what if Ned tells her, "Cat, you're right to be worried, but for a much bigger reason. This boy isn't my bastard. He's the rightful heir to the Iron Throne, and his existence puts every one of us, especially our children, in mortal peril every day." Does that make her feel better about Jon? Or does it turn her existing resentment into pure, justifiable terror? It transforms Jon from a personal insult into an existential threat to her entire world. Ned couldn't risk putting her in that impossible position. The conflict between her duty to her husband's promise and her duty to protect her own children would be unbearable. So he made the choice for her. He let her hate Jon for the wrong reasons, because hating a simple bastard is much, much safer than knowing he is a king. Risk number 3, the chain of command. This ties in to the last point. Telling Catelyn doesn't just mean telling Catelyn. Catelyn is a Tully of Riverrun. Her family is one of the great houses. Her father, Hoster, her brother, Edmure, her uncle, the famous knight Bryndon Blackfish, and most critically, her sister, Lysa, is married to Jon Arryn, the Hand of the King, the most powerful man in the realm besides Robert himself. If Ned tells Catelyn, he is bringing the secret into the orbit of House Tully, and by extension, House Arryn. It's a political minefield. What if Lord Hoster, on his deathbed, learned the truth? What would he do with that information to secure the future of his house? What if the fiercely loyal Bryndon Blackfish found out? He might see it as a duty he couldn't ignore. And the Lysa-Arryn connection is the most dangerous of all. Lysa is notoriously unstable, jealous, and easily manipulated. If Catelyn, in a moment of sisterly confidence, shared this terrible secret with Lysa in the Vale, it would be like handing a lit torch to a child in a room full of wildfire. The secret would be out in a heartbeat, and the consequences would be catastrophic. Ned Stark is a man who understands politics. He knows that information is power, and that secrets have a way of traveling through family lines. By telling his wife, he would lose control of the secret. It would no longer be his alone to keep. It would belong, in a way, to House Tully. And that was a risk he could never, ever take. Risk number 4. The lie was too old. Finally, there's the simple, sad human element of it, the timing. When was the right moment to tell her? Think about it. When he first came back from the war, they were practically strangers. Their marriage was a military pact. He rides in, she's holding his true-born son, and he's holding a baby he claims is his bastard. The trust between them simply wasn't there. He couldn't have told her then. It would have been insane. Greetings, wife I just met. I've just returned from the war where I committed treason by hiding the heir to the dynasty we just overthrew. Can you keep that a secret for me? Absolutely not. So, the lie is born of necessity. Then years pass. They fall in love. They have more children. They build a life. But the lie is now the foundation of their one great conflict. It's a wall between them. Every year that passes, the wall gets higher. The lie gets heavier. How do you even begin to have that conversation after 10, 12, 14 years? Catelyn, my love, we need to talk. You know Jon, the boy you've resented for his entire life? The living symbol of my infidelity that has caused you so much pain and poisoned a part of our marriage. Well, good news. It was all a lie.
He's not my son. He's actually my nephew, the secret Targaryen heir, and his existence is a death sentence for all of us if the truth ever comes out. I let you believe I was a dishonorable husband for our entire marriage to protect him. I'm sorry you had to suffer, but it was necessary. It's an impossible conversation. It's not just an apology for a lie. It's a confession that he allowed her to live in misery, that he prioritized a promise to his dead sister over his wife's peace of mind for their entire life together. He would be admitting that he fundamentally did not trust her with the most important truth of his life. How does a marriage recover from that? The longer the lie went on, the more impossible it became to tell. The lie took on a life of its own. It became a part of the fabric of their family. To undo it would be to unravel everything. So Ned just kept carrying the burden, alone. So we come back to our original question. Why didn't Ned tell Cat about Jon? The answer is as tragic as it is simple. He didn't tell her because he loved her. He loved her enough not to burden her with a secret that would put her in mortal terror every day of his life. He respected her enough to know that her fierce loyalty to her own children might force her to make an impossible choice. He loved his family, all of his family, enough to know that the secret was safest with one person, even if it meant he had to live as a lesser man in the eyes of his own wife. Ned Stark's great lie was not his one dishonor. It was, perhaps, his most profoundly honorable act. In a world of vipers and schemers who use secrets as weapons, Ned Stark used his as a shield. He shielded his nephew from a wrathful king. He shielded his wife from a terrible choice. And he shielded the realm from another bloody war. He paid for that shield with his own reputation and with a piece of his own soul. He lived with the coldness of his wife, the whispers of his bannermen, and the sadness of a boy who believed he was nothing more than a stain on his father's name. It is the central tragedy of Eddard Stark, the one act that truly defined his unwavering, unbreakable honor, is the one thing the world will forever remember as his only great shame. And that is a secret worth understanding. The mug being picked up, a final sip, and the crackle of the fire slowly fading out.